So I'm gonna move that silly box microscope. Awesome. Okie dokie. Well, welcome everybody to our class today. And today we are going to be talking about discernment for an uncertain world. And I really feel like this class is super important because there are so many things that are deceiving in this world. We have AI, we have things in the news that are fake, fake pictures, fake a lot of things, including fake spiritual people out there. And, I have the gift of discernment, and I feel like it's been invaluable in my life. I don't always use it perfectly, but when I do use it, it's helped me out of some sticky situations. It's helped me understand when there's a problem in life. And I feel like this is something that's really important to teach to everyone because, I'm not always going to be there as someone's, magic 8 ball when they have something come up. And I would love for everybody to have their own discernment so that you guys can understand the situations in your life with more clarity. And so this is kind of the intention of this class. And so, I want to first talk about like the difference between discernment and intuition and psychic abilities, because in some ways they do overlap. And so that I think is an important thing to kind of like understand, is that there is some overlapping with this stuff, because your spiritual gifts, so say you were clairsentient, that's going to open up your intuition and it's going to open up your discernment, but they're just a little bit different things. And so when we think about intuition is something that we have the ability to understand something immediately, kind of based on a feeling or kind of just like a thought, it's like those gut instincts basically. So intuition is something that everybody is born with the ability to use, and they're able to at least use intuition for themselves, sometimes for their family, and things like that. Discernment is kind of utilizing that intuition, utilizing your spiritual gift, but also it differs because it takes a little bit of time to draw a conclusion. So you may need to sit with an intuitive feeling or a psychic feeling or a person or a situation or a complex problem or something to kind of double check and ensure your feelings. Whereas intuition is kind of like this sudden intense feeling, or kind of like nervousness in the pit of your stomach. And so we kind of think like intuition would be like, okay, I had this feeling that I should not drive down a certain road. And I have no idea why, but every time I drove further down that road, the feeling got worse and worse and worse. That's your intuition warning you of some sort of danger, right? And many of us have had situations like that where we're like, I felt like I should take a different road, or that maybe I should lock my car doors, or things like that. And so here's, I like to tell stories. So here's a story about what happened with my daughter. My daughter was out shopping with a friend, and they were getting ready to go get in her car. And her intuition was like, get in your car and lock the doors. When she got to her car door was like, the handle was weird. She couldn't get into it quite properly. And so intuition like, get in your car, get in your car. So she yanked it open. Her and her friend got in the car. The second they closed and locked their doors, a man pulled up behind them in a white van. 2 men got out on the side of them and were actively trying to get into her vehicle. She had to gas her car, jump over the curb, and get away from these guys that we assumed were traffickers. And so her intuition saved her from danger. It was an immediate response of this morning feeling that she was listening to, right? So when we think of discernment is more of, okay, I have this feeling that I should do something, but maybe it needs a little more thought or understanding. So maybe you're thinking about a new job, or you're thinking about making an investment or taking a trip. And you're like, your intuition, your first gut instinct is like, yeah, do this. But you're like, I need to sit with it a little bit longer. I need to discern, fill out the details, feel out what's going on. And sometimes when there's like multiple people involved or big situations, you have to sit with the discernment, and you have to really sit with not only discerning and picking apart things, but utilizing your intuition as well as your spiritual gifts, so that you can sit here and say, okay, I know that this is the right path. And so it's kind of adding layers to things. So I don't know, hopefully that is a little bit more clear as mud, maybe, about what we think about with intuition and discernment. And so those gut feelings can come from spirit, that discernment can come from spirit, and it can just be kind of these combinations of everything. And so when we think about discernment, it is really how to understand or know something through the power of spirit. It includes perceiving the true character of people, and the source and meaning of spiritual manifestations. I had an awesome conversation with some friends at dinner, and we were talking about somebody's client and trying to discern, what was going on with some energy around a client. So that's kind of an example of like, we had this spiritual experience, we worked with this client, but then we had to sit and say like, what was going on with this client? Let's sit and discern and like check in and check deeper. And so discernment is really going deeper with the intuition and the spiritual gifts, and finding more understanding. And so with discernment, this developing the gift of discernment is something that we can all do. Some people have it a little more naturally than others. I always joke that my sister Vicky kind of lacks that discernment, but really it's not that we lack it, it's that we haven't developed it. So my sister just hasn't developed it. She's more of a reactive personality, and so oftentimes we'll see people that are highly intuitive, but they're also reactive. And I actually fall into this category a lot, where we have reactions, and we're like, okay, my gut instinct says this, and we just poof, and we try to make decisions instead of sitting with this and trying to understand it. And so my husband's kind of always on me. He's like, you're always jumping the gun with stuff. And I'm like, I know, but I can't help it. But really, I can help it. And so discernment can help us detect hidden errors in others. It can help us detect hidden errors in ourselves. It can help us bring forth things that are good or things that are concealed. So we can it can kind of help us find like, hey, let me find the good in a situation. Let me find something that's a hidden good, or maybe someone is concealing or hiding a hidden truth. And so that discernment can help us find that. So it's really about finding these things, and we can even use it to discern and find and bring forth the good and the spiritual gifts and the natural talents and abilities that are concealed within us. I know myself, and a lot of people included, we often don't see the beauty in ourselves and the spiritual gifts and the wisdom that we have. We don't see the true innate power that we have. And so sometimes with discernment and developing discernment, we can even discern things within ourselves, our spiritual gifts, our soul purpose, all of those fun things. So it can even be used for discerning yourself. And so when we think about discernment and the spirit guiding us, we think about discernment as the intuition and the spiritual gifts combined with observations. And so we're able to sometimes promptly notice or look at things and then say, okay, I'm going to listen to that. So sometimes these things work out, sometimes they don't. Sometimes spirit is even just testing us to say, hey, are you listening? And nothing comes of situations, right? Or sometimes by listening, we avoid a bad situation or something, right? And so I talk a lot about using discernment in business, making business choices, partnership choices, things like that. And so for me, when I look at discernment, I'm like, okay, I have an intuitive feeling. I sit with it and I check in. I'm like, one, if I make a decision on this now, is it going to affect things in a negative way? Do I need to sit with this and wait? Can I make a choice now without causing a huge issue? So, funny story this morning, I'm up at the butt crack of dawn taking my son to football practice. And much to my poor husband's chagrin, I take him to practice in my pajamas because I'm like, nobody's got time for that. I'm going to go take him to practice and I'm going to come home and go right back to bed because I don't do 5 a.m. So I'm driving back from practice in my pajamas and, they're just regular long pajamas, the button up, very with the little pajama pants, so it's nothing like inappropriate, but my intuition was like, stop by this gas station and buy a lottery ticket. And I'm like, really? No, I'm in my pajamas. I'm not doing that. No, thank you. No, thank you. And I don't buy a lot of lottery tickets, but I do every once in a while. And do I ever win? No. Sometimes I'll win $1, right? And so I'm like, no, I'm not gonna go in my pajamas. I'm not gonna go buy a lottery ticket in my pajamas. No way. And my intuition was like, oh, stop at this very specific gas station and get this lottery ticket. So finally I was like, okay, fine. And so I did. I walked in my pajamas and I bought a couple lottery tickets and I walked out. I thought for sure he was gonna stare at me and look at me weird, but the guy just kind of rolled his eyes at me and gave me my ticket and I left. Do I know if anything's gonna happen of that? No. Do I think I'm gonna win the lottery? I have no freaking clue. I might not, right? Sometimes spirit just tests to see if you're listening. And I know for me, a lot of my things have been spirit's been testing me to see if I'm listening and if I'm paying attention. So spirit will give you small little things to discern, small little intuitions, small little promptings, and then you're going to build on those things. And you're going to build and you're going to build and you're going to build. And so those things are going to get bigger and bigger. So it's yet to be seen if anything is going to come of my $2 spending spree this morning, but it was a very interesting thing. And so for me, it's almost like a little bit of a science project where I'm like, okay, let's see if anything happens. Right? Let's see was this me? Because, sometimes these things can be ourselves too. Like we have our higher self and our subconscious coming through. And this could be my subconscious that was just like, this is the only way that you're going to get a bunch of money that you need. Go buy a ticket. Right? And so that could be that was coming through. And so for me, it was an interesting experiment to say, like, let's see where this goes. And so, for me, I'm like, okay, discerning this really quick. I have this weird little prompting. It says go buy a lottery ticket. Okay, is there any harm in this action if I just go take action right now? No, it's going to cost me a couple bucks. I have a couple bucks and change sitting in my truck. No big deal, right? I'm going to listen to this because it's not really going to cause any harm to listen. And it's, for me, it's like benign. So for that thing, I'm like, yeah, sure. Right. For other things, like, we're considering moving somewhere. So I am like the person, I'm like my poor husband, I'm always like jumping the gun. I'm like, let's go do this. Let's do it. Let's move. So I could jump in and go rent an apartment like tomorrow, right? Without using any discernment, without sitting with things, without checking, without maybe going to the area and it might work out, right? With my intuition. If I'm really on fire with my intuition, usually it'll work out, but it would cause a lot of chaos for everybody else around me, right? So, checking in with that discernment, checking in with that intuition, I say, I have time to sit back. We can wait a few days. This is not something that we have to jump into right away, right? So, there are times when you need to be quick to jump in and observe, and sometimes where you need to kind of stand back and be like, I can kind of sit and wait on this, right? There's many stories of people who, have had, just little whispers of, hey, call a friend. Hey, do this. Go ask that person if they need help. My husband, he we were at Costco, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and there was a man who was struggling to, I think it was a picnic table he was trying to shove in the back of his truck. And my husband in his intuition was like, I need to go help that man. He discerned the situation really quick and he walked up, hey, do you need help? And the man was like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you. I don't know how I was going to get this up in my truck. And so my husband helped the guy lift it up in his truck really quickly. And so that's a quick discernment, right? And so discernment is something that we can use every day, right? We can use it to help ourselves. We can use it to others. When we are quick to observe and then discern and notice and kind of obey those intuitions, it can really bring an awesome result. And like I said, sometimes it's something, sometimes it's nothing, right? But it can be something that is not only a, for lack of a better term, a spiritual blessing to other people, but also to ourselves. And I can't tell you how many times I've had the spirit be like, do this, do that. And it is really helped people. So, we look at these spiritual gifts and we look at discernment, and it can be used in these situations. It can be used to discern things like spirits. So mediumship is not something that I do a lot of, right? But sometimes people will come and force their way through readings. And I'll be like, oh my God, he's here. I distinctly remember one time when a ghost came in and they were telling jokes, and they were like telling these weird little funny dad jokes. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And so I had to sit for a minute and listen to this weird ghosty person in my ear, and then discern, okay, is this a spirit? Yes. Is this someone connected? Who is this? And then I found out, like, it goes, husband, I'm her husband. And I go, ma'am, I apologize, but has your husband perhaps passed? And she was like, oh yeah, he passed like 6 months ago or something like that. I can't remember exactly the time frame. And I said, okay, because he's here and he's telling me jokes. And she goes, oh my God, that's him. He tells jokes all the time, right? And it turned into this beautiful conversation because she was really brokenhearted about him, and having this conversation back and forth. And he was telling us how he went to his boss's house and could see his boss in his underwear. And it was like the funniest jokes in the world. And that is what she needed at that moment, right? And so through that discernment, I could discern that there was a spirit there, and that was going to be part of her healing. And so, am I the only one that can hear spirits? No, we all can, right? And your spirits and your family members can come talk to you. They can come talk to you in dreams. They can come talk to you like this dad ghost that did here. They can come talk to you in little symbols, like dropping little feathers or coins or things like that. And discernment is the way that you can understand what they're telling you and how they're telling you to do things, right? And so discernment is a very powerful form of a spiritual gift that we're all born with, that we can develop. Now, on the real world applications of these things, like I was talking about in the beginning of this call, we're looking at things in this world that are really wonky. They're very upside down. We see AI just surging into everything now. And it's, for a lot of people, I actually see a lot of people in my Facebook who will post an AI picture and think that it's real. They'll like repost these pictures like, oh my gosh, look at this. Back in the 1800s, somebody found a gold nugget this big. And like, I have a graphic design background, so I can see most often immediately when something's AI. But for someone who doesn't have an untrained eye, they're seeing these pictures and they're thinking they're real, right? We have many instances where the news will pass, a conglomerated image or fake image or deep fake AI stuff as real, right? A hotly contested place that this has recently happened was with the whole royal family debacle with Princess Catherine, Kate, whatever her name is. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Okay. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, she made a video. It's totally fine. I'm like, that's a deep fake AI video. how do you guys not see? You know, and as soon as she was picking out pictures, I was like, those are AIs. Those are interesting. And so with discernment, when your discernment's on, you're going to see and know these things immediately. You're going to sense that something is off, because discernment is able to pick up the energy of something or someone and understand if it is truth or fiction, right? And so you can sit with this and be like, is this news article truth or fiction? Is this photograph truth or fiction? Is this video truth or fiction? Right? Discernment is also really powerful, because a lot of I follow a lot of like astrologers and things like this, where they're like, hey, the whole world's going to get crazy. There's wars coming and destruction coming and things like that. And it's really easy to get sucked into these things and start to get really panicked. Oh my God, this astrologer says the astrology is just like the revolution. And oh my gosh, that's so scary. And oh my gosh, and we can get sucked into this kind of frenzy that's going on. But discernment is able to say, okay, yeah, those things might be happening, but not in your area, not in your town, not in your city, not your state, not your country. Right. And so by discernment, we can say, okay, yeah, that might be truth, but it's not true for me. Right. And so a lot of times, and I've found this to be very true, especially with spiritually gifted people, they will see something in the future, but they're not discerning it properly, or they're not sharing it properly. So they'll share it as truth for everyone, when really it's truth either for them or their local place or their local city, or maybe their group or their family. And it's not truth for everyone. Right. And so we get these things because they're shared, they're sensational, they go viral, and people are like, oh, those are so amazing, those are so cool. Well, when you use your discernment, you might be like, yeah, that's true for maybe the people who, like maybe like one of my things, and this is why I don't often share my dreams, is I saw tornadoes hitting all over and like destroying and things like that. Well, that may be true for certain areas, but it's not true for every area. Right. And so if I was like, hey, tornadoes are going to go around, they're going to destroy everything, people freak the hell out. Well, you know what? You live in an area that's not prone to tornadoes, it's probably not going to be truth for you. Right. And so that discernment can be used to say, hey, first of all, is this message true? Okay, yeah, that message is true. Second question, is that message true for me? And I'm actually discerning right now. I'm asking, and I use muscle testing. And this is something I teach a lot to people, is muscle testing, because it bypasses anxiety. It bypasses that distrust and that subconscious to really give you more clear answers. When I first started, and I don't know if I can find it here. Let's see if I can find that. I used a little pendulum because my anxiety got in the way all the time. I don't see it. My kids may have ran off with it. My daughter likes to play with it. It's a pretty crystal, they're like, ooh, crystals. I don't see any, but I would use the pendulum as kind of like a way that it would like sway or go back and forth, and kind of use that. But now, okay, but now I kind of use myself as that pendulum. And so if you noticed, I'd be like, this whole tornado thing, is this truth? And you can actually see where my body pulls forward, because my body's trained at this point to feel these things and to understand. Oh, my sweet husband found it for me. Thank you, baby. He's so awesome. He always knows where my stuff is. I'm all over here ADHD, like losing crap all the time. And he's like, here you go. I know where it is. So I'd use my little pendulum. Pendulums, they get a little bit of a bad rap, especially, from religious populations, but really pendulums are just an extension of your energy, right? It's an extension of your mind to kind of just show you where things go. So pendulums do need to be cleansed. And this one is actually, I busted the tip off. And they do say when you break your pendulum like that, it means that it's done doing work for you, and that you need to send it to someone else. Although I still have mine, so it'll still work. And so really a pendulum, if you're going to use a pendulum, you can just hold it, and let's see if I can do it. I'll show you really quick. And I'll say, show me yes. And you will see it start to swing. I'm going to try to really hold my hand still. So this is going back and forth for yes, and that's typical for me. And I'll say stop. Show me no. Sorry, my hands are sometimes shaky, so I'm trying to be really still so you guys can actually see this works. Okay, so you'll see that it's going the other direction for no, right? And I already know where my yeses and nos are, but I'll be like, show me maybe. And it'll take a minute because I didn't tell it to stop, but you'll see maybe for me goes in a circle. Okay. So for me, this can help me discern, especially when I have anxiety. And like, even me, like the past 6 months, I've been going through some stuff, I've had a lot of stuff going on. My anxiety's at a high. And so for me, this was a simple way to just double check and use my discernment. In fact, my husband found one of my little things. I took a look. Oftentimes I take like a little index card. I don't have my index card, but I'll take like, this is an envelope. I've actually been known to write on envelopes too. Take a little index card and I wrote, this is just my envelope, but for me, I was trying to think about places that we might move. And so I wrote, like I'll do it here. I'll write Denver, I'll write Dallas, I'll write New York, and what's another place? Portland. Okay. And so I get this on my little, I don't know if it's kind of hard to see, but I made little 4 corners. And then I hold my pendulum above it. And I just say, which city is the best city for us to move to? And it's kind of hard let me see if I can get it up here where you guys can see. So should I swing in the direction of the city that's the best city for us? And I don't know if you can see, but it's actually really kind of trying to move towards the front of that page. And the front of that page is moving towards Denver. So on this list, and these are not cities I'm considering moving to, but it's just a demonstration. Denver would be the best city out of all 4 of these for me and my family, based on this. But for me, I actually wrote down cities that we were actually considering, but I'm not putting that up here right now. So that's some way you can do it. If you're in a decision-making process, just say swing towards the best decision. And this, I think, is a really fantastic way if you're starting out or if you're dealing with a lot of anxiety or stress, where you can just be like, I just need a visual something to show me. There's a gal on TikTok right now, and she is insanely fun to watch on discernment. She has dowsing rods. Now, dowsing rods are just the same thing. They're extensions of your energy. And she sits there and holds them. And I don't know if you guys have seen her. She's so fun. She'll just ask the Rod's questions, and there'll be yes or no questions, and she'll like, thank you, and then she'll go on to another question and thank you. And so she does these things, and it's just incredible, but she's using a visual form of discernment for her to ask questions to help her discern things. And so don't be afraid of using little tools like this. I remember when I first got my pendulum, people were like, oh my gosh, you're like channeling the devil. I'm like, no, that's not the intention of this. It is the intention and the energy that we put through it. It is literally just a flipping tool. Okay. Ooh, yes, I'm almost done, sweetie. My keto interruptions. So I'm going to pause right here because we know interruptions mean sometimes that there is fear, resistance, or maybe even questions. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I'm going to try to open up my chat here. So I'm old and moldy. So where is my chat button? Let's find it here. So they moved everything in this, and I swear I cannot always find it. Let's try to get the chat open. There we go. Chat. There we go. Chat's open. If anybody has questions on this or suggestions, comments, I am open. If you have anything to add, please, it's all open. But I'm going to keep moving just so that that's open. But these are all tools that we can use in our discernment. I do have 2 free classes that are up under Watch SpiritFluent that talk about intuition, that will go deeper into using muscle testing. There's a lot of videos online about muscle testing, but it's literally just using your body as like a dowsing rod or a pendulum. My 19-year-old son we went crystal hunting out in the desert here in Arizona. He used his body as a pendulum and he was like, take me to the closest crystal. And that boy came back with a handful of crystals because he just literally like called out to the crystals, listened to them, and then followed it and found them, right? So this can be used, and there's actually people who or use their discernment, their spiritual gifts for finding things like water in wells. Okay, let's see. Dr. Becky says this is really interesting. When the internet was first getting popular, we all said, don't believe everything you read on the internet. But in recent years, with more and more people talking about things, it seems like the general feeling is most things on the internet are true, even though many people are simply stating their opinions as truth or simply repeating what they have heard or read somewhere and presenting it as truth. Yes, that is so true. And that is actually a very good point, because I've noticed a lot of articles, like if you search a certain topic, are just regurgitations of the same information over and over and over again. And that there's not a lot of new information or in-depth information. It's just everybody kind of regurgitating things over and over. So we've just almost primed ourselves into believing things, including AI. Yeah, we have, right? And someone a long time ago, they said something to me of the effect of only don't believe everything you see and only half of what you hear, right? And as humans, it's really hard for us to see something with our eyes and not believe it as true, right? And not believe it as reality. But when we see things like AI coming into play and technology, it becomes increasingly difficult to discern that truth from fiction, right? And so this is where that comes in, especially when it comes to AI, when it comes to news stories, because I will tell you, anytime there's a big story on the news, 9 times out of 10, they're using something to hide something else, right? And so that discernment can be like, is this true, or are they hiding something, right? Are they using this story? And I can tell you so many times I have been like, Spirit's been like, look deeper, look where they're hiding things, look what's going on. And I'm like, oh, wait, here's this, here's that. And so many people are waking up now and they're able to use that discernment. And so you see a lot of people, like, especially with what's going on in Gaza right now, where they're like, I don't believe your official stories because my discernment is on point. I know something is different. I know something is untrue, right? But where there is conflict, there's always distraction. And so even with what's going on, it's like, where is that deeper distraction? Why are we being distracted? Right. And so it is something atrocities and horrors going on. But what's the deeper thing that we're being detracted from? What is, so take those things deeper. Use your discernment beyond surface level things, right? So like with Gaza, like if I ask, is there something deeper in being hidden through Gaza? Yes. Okay, so are these stories and these conflicts used to hide other actions? Yes. I've already kind of gone through this, so I'm going to go through it with you guys. I'm going to ask another question. Is it being used to hide political conflicts in our country? Yes. Is it used to distract from the election conflicts? Yes. Is it used to be distracting from the economic conflicts? Absolutely. So we can see, like, it's like, yes, there are very real, very horrible things going on, but oftentimes things are used to elicit emotions from us, and they are justified emotions. We are justified in feeling upset and just sick to our stomachs over what's going on between Gaza and Israel, right? And so we're like, yeah, this is wrong. This is justified. We put all our emotions into this. But we can miss something that's at the bigger picture. And so that discernment can say, hey, I see where the truth is and what's being presented to me, but I can also see the hidden truths. So there's also hidden truths under these things as well. And so with discernment, you are taking things down deeper and deeper, and you can go down big rabbit holes with this. And so, I always tell people proceed with caution, because, there was one time I was playing around with intuition and discernment, and I've been really focused on like health and healing my body. And I'm literally in the grocery store with a red apple and green apple. I'm like, okay, Spirit, which apple is better for me? And Spirit's like, dude, stop. Like, no. Like God does not care if you eat the red or green apple. Pick one, right? And so like don't go crazy with this. If you notice that it's making you spiral in very weird things, like not being able to choose between apples, then you know you've taken stuff like this too far, right? We have to keep one foot grounded in reality and one foot over in the spiritual world and become that bridge and that gap. And it is something that it can be very complicated because we're presented with one side. This is the real world. We have to go to work. We have to buy groceries. We have to pay bills. And then we have this is the spiritual world. And then also this is the hidden real world. This is the hidden spiritual world. And, finding those truths. And especially now online, when it comes to the spiritual side of things, someone can say anything they want and claim it's a spiritual download. They can claim it's a spiritual gift. And people could believe them because there's no way to disprove it, right? There's no way to disprove. What is that one bald guy that's always doing downloads? Same starts with a B. Can't remember. Anyways, there's this one guy that's always on there doing these downloads. And like as soon as I saw him, my discernment was like, nope, don't believe him. Wrong. Not for you. Good. Right. And everybody comes saying, what about this guy? What about this guy? I'm like, you know how I know that he's not channeling from spirit? Because he's loud. And spiritual people don't speak loudly. But he's very loud, he's very shouting. But my discernment warning bells were on immediately with that guy, right? There's other times where like people are like, oh, what do you think of the medical medium? Because he's also a medical intuitive, right? And I'm like, there's partial truth, right? The discernment comes in like, yeah, some of the things this guy said, true. Some of those things, not so much. Take with a grain of salt, can create harm, right? That's where discernment can come in because we get hit with people and and I'm in this arena too. And so I personally have rules for myself, trying to be really careful about creating sensationalism. But we have people with large following counts and people are like, oh, they have 1 million followers. There's no way they can tell me a lie. It's got to be true, right? Oh, they're part of the news media. It's got to be true, right? And so, it is not always true, right? I think this is why I've been stuck at about 300,000 on TikTok because I am not willing to go over and cross over that line, right? And TikTok has actually come to me and other creators and put me in classes of like, you need to do this more. You need to make it more. And I'm like, I can't. I'm not into that, dude. No, can't do it. It's me. We do it like we are and we leave it as it is, right? And so I don't buy into that sensationalism. So, I'm not maybe as popular as other people, but I'm okay with that because I would not want to be in that position of leading people astray. But other people don't care. They're all about money, and we see like this very strongly because I have probably over 100 accounts that are impersonating me, right? And they scam people all the time. And it doesn't matter how many times I report them, how many times we try to stop people, it doesn't get taken down. And so, I have to tell people all the time, use your discernment, check on things, understand, oh, would this really be Stacee messaging me out of the blue, wanting to do a reading for me, and so, discernment can really keep us away from predatory people, predatory actions, predatory anything. It keeps us safe, both physically and emotionally and spiritually. And so discernment is a super important thing to develop. It is something, like I said, that it will be developed in small pieces. It is not going to be an overnight thing where you're like, poof, I got it. I understand it, right? And there's different levels, there's wisdom, there's understanding, there's the ability to discern and counsel others, right? Give others advice, right? And there's knowledge, right? So there's these things that it's not just one thing, but there's different levels of that, right? And like I said, I think everyone has that power, right? And the most important thing to remember is that if someone comes and they say, I have the power to discern for you and everyone else around here, and no one else can do it, that's a warning sign, right? If they're telling you no one else can use your discernment and you need to trust them, that's when we start thinking, is this a cult leader? What's going on? Right? If they try to take your power away from you, that's a really good sign, right? That we can be like, oh, something's a little wonky doodle, right? And so with discernment, we are able to look into that truth, the truth of all things, all people, and not just take things as face value, to be able to understand things on a deeper level. I am a big storyteller. So another story about discernment is one that I found very interesting. And I don't remember all the specific details, so forgive me for that. But there were a group of spiritual leaders who were discussing a book. I believe the book was written in German, but there were spiritual leaders from India and the United States and Russia, and like all over the world, right? And they all come together and they're discussing this book. Well, there was one guru there, and apparently he had not had the opportunity to read the book. And he had just been given the book and he was holding the book. And the people were talking about like, oh, this is a really great book. It's got some really great concepts. And so he was just kind of holding, meditating the book. And they're like, well, what do you think? And he goes, well, there's nothing good in this book. This book is not useful. And everyone was like, well, wait. How do you know this? You didn't even read the book. You don't even read German. Like, how do you know this? Right? And he was like, ask me anything about what's in that book and I will tell you what's in the book. And the guy turned to like page 73 and he's like, okay, blah, 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 blah. And, tell me about this. And the guy actually, so this is how developed his discernment was. He was actually able to repeat in verbatim in his own language what was written on those pages, because he used that spiritual discernment to not only discern the book, to discern the author's intentions in the writing. And they kept flipping through this book, and this guy was like, oh, this is on this page, this is on that page. And the guy was like, how did you do this? And he's just like, spiritual stuff. And that's a very strong way of showing discernment, right? This guy literally knew what was in this book without reading it because he was so good at discernment. Now, I'm not that fantastic with discernment. I was like nowhere near that. But I had a book story where everybody was talking about A Course in Miracles. And they're like, it's this big, thick book, and all the spiritual people talking about this book. Got to read this book, got to read this book. And so, of course, my mind goes, well, yeah, if everybody else reads that book, you got to read it too. So I bought the book. It's kind of an expensive book, but I bought the book. And when it arrived at my house, I opened it up and like, I'm going to like read this Course in Miracles. It's a very long book, and I'm going to be where all these other spiritual gurus are. And in my head, Spirit goes, that book is not for you. Return it. And I was like, no, like all the spiritual gurus reading this book. Everyone's talking about this. I need this book. And I was sitting with it again. Spirit's like, that book is not for you. Close it. Send it back. And I was like, oh, really? And so I kept kind of reading through it a little bit. And Spirit was like, again, not for you. And finally I was like, fine. And I just kind of sat with it. I'm like, is this book for me? And Spirit was like, no. I'm like, does this book contain truth? And it was like, partly. I'm like, is this book fiction? Partly. I'm like, is this book good? And it goes, not for you. And I was like, okay. I'm like, is this book good for others? Some of them. And I was like, okay. So for me, my personal discernment was that book wasn't good for me. Not that the book wasn't good for everyone, but specifically for me, there was something in that book that would have created an issue for whatever reason, and Spirit did not want me to read that book. So I took the book, packed it back up, sent it back to Amazon. And I've never read that book. Well, I've read a few pages, but never read the book. Don't know why, don't know what was in it, but I just listened. And sometimes with discernment, we may not fully ever know exactly why, right? We may not be like, oh yeah, I absolutely know this. I absolutely don't know this. So you may not ever see the results of why or the results of your actions. You may make a choice, right? And you do it, and then all of a sudden you're like, I know exactly why. And then sometimes you're never going to know. It's never going to come forward. And sometimes you're not going to listen, like yours truly. I don't listen all the time. And I see the results of not listening. And I'm like, oh, I should have listened. Dang it. Why didn't I listen? Why didn't I pay attention? Be okay with those moments too. Because with those moments, it's going to give you more strength and understanding. So the next time you have a situation that needs intuition and discernment and knowledge, you're going to be able to kind of come back and be like, okay, I can discern this and I can figure this out, right? So discernment will keep us from deception. It will help us seek out our spiritual gifts. It will help us listen to the spiritual voices. It will help us discern our own thoughts and emotions. You know, the biggest one for me is this anxiety or is this a warning? Because sometimes and we've done this many times with muscle testing. You can do this. Let's do a little activity right now. Let's do this really quick at the end here. Let's figure things out. So we're going to sit with our body. And this is kind of a form of muscle testing. I want you to just kind of sit here and just kind of breathe and connect with your body really quick. And I want you to ask your body, show me anxiety. And I want you to notice where you're feeling anxiety in your body. Just notice. There's no right or wrong answer. This is your body and your experience. Now, show me a warning intuition. Notice if that feeling moves, how it feels differently. Now let's ask another question. Show me how discernment feels in my body. So I'm going to kind of describe for me how this feels. Anxiety, I feel up here in my chest. Okay. Anxiety is not always truth. Okay. This is our subconscious's reaction to culminations of life experiences. Anxiety can lead you astray. When I say show me intuition, discernment, it comes down more in my belly. Okay. And it feels heavier. It feels like more like trying to not move me. And when I ask just to show me like understanding, discernment, and knowledge, I start to feel lighter. I start to feel like uplifted. I can feel it kind of in my head. I kind of feel a little floaty. So I feel better. I feel more uplifted, right? And so that's an important thing about discernment, right? Discernment will not create more confusion. If you are confused when you are trying to discern something, then it is not right. Okay. Discernment will have this instant kind of, sometimes it'll be a happy, joyful, warm feeling. Sometimes it'll be like, I feel like this light, uplifting feeling, but it will never feel sad or confusing. If you are feeling like sadness or heaviness or confusion, then that's probably more of a no, pull away from this. This is not a good thing feeling, right? But when something kind of gives you like this, like uplifting, you're like, okay, that's a good choice. So if we're getting kind of more that sad down in the gut, like, oh, I don't know about this feeling. Sometimes it might be like, this is a bad situation. This might be a warning. And so as you work on your personal discernment, you are going to learn how your body, your discernment, your intuition works. And not everyone's going to have the same signals, the same feelings. It's all going to be different. And it's valid to be different. I was teaching this to my son, and he was like, oh, I feel yes in my thighs and no in the front of my thighs and no in the back of my thighs. Okay, that's true for you, right? Discernment feels different for him. Yeses feel no, and so you have to really kind of sit and practice with your intuition. And I will tell you, like, I've been doing this forever, and I still get tripped up sometimes. I still let my anxiety get in the way. And so, for me, I also put this out to God and the universe and spirit. I'm like, hey, if my discernment is incorrect, please send some sort of action, something that will make me rethink or like second guess or just give me a sign, right? And I will often get somebody being like, are you sure about that? Usually my husband, but sometimes it's my friend Becky or Julie or other people where they're like, do you want to rethink that? You want to recheck your intuition, maybe, or they'll give you a different perspective or things like that. Or they'll call you and they'll be like, hey, do you want to do this or that? So kind of look for invitations or interruptions from people and notice not just what you're feeling, but the signs around you, because synchronicities are a real thing, right? And so those can also kind of be part of your discernment, where you're seeing or noticing or feeling, or people are calling you or giving you advice or things like that. For me, like I notice, like I'll start to get a repetition of people literally saying the same thing over and over, like different people giving the same advice over and over, or different people bringing up the same topic over and over again. And then you're like, okay, they're helping me discern. So be okay with spirit sending you helpers, right? Where they're like, hey, have you thought about this? Hey, have you thought about this? And that's really spirit like helping you try to discern, because it's like, let me send some helpers to you. Let me send some people to kind of get you to think more and to kind of look at this situation, to look before you leap and things like that. And I'm a big I know I'm a big person, like I like a rush into stuff a lot. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, right? And so when I have people like say, hey, pause, think about this, it helps me sit with my discernment more. And so being open to those interruptions and other people, right? Our bodies are filled with a beautiful light of our soul and our higher self. And this higher self can comprehend everything. It understands everything, right? And we can discern it through the spirit. But sometimes our subconscious and the real world trips us up and gets in the way, because we've been preconditioned to not use this, to not understand this, so that we are sometimes more easily manipulated or controlled by people, places, things, and all of that stuff. And nobody is immune to this. If people say they are perfect and they have this all understood, sometimes I doubt them. I'm like, oh, do you really? I think everybody is in this constant learning phase of constantly learning and rechecking and re-understanding. So, when I first started with my intuition, I remember I was sitting there actually in a church class, and they were talking about spiritual discernment and intuition. And I realized like everybody had all these amazing stories about how they use their intuition and they were discerning things. And I was like, I had nothing. And I remember calling my mom and crying. This was before my mom went missing. So this must have been about 9 years ago. I was like, everybody knows how to use their spiritual gifts and they have intuition and discernment. And I have nothing. And you know, and my mom told me, sometimes she still had good advice, even though she was a little crazy lady. She goes, you have to listen and you have to practice, and it is not something that comes all at once. And so they call it spiritual practices for a reason, is because we're constantly practicing and constantly developing. And so don't be discouraged as you are starting to open your discernment and as you are starting to listen to things if you get things wrong, because the wrong, when we're off or wrong, it just teaches us, okay, now I know what that feeling is. I know how to do this differently, right? And so pay attention to all things. Don't get down on yourself and be like, oh, this is hard, or I can't do it. You can. Everyone has the gift and power of intuition and discernment. Every person on this planet, right? Some people are develop it more than others. Some people have the intuition discernment for others, and some people it's just for yourself. Some people it's for yourself and your family. So just kind of be okay with wherever you are and be okay with developing that and understanding that. And as you work with that, you are able to understand the difference of the outward appearance of things and what truly lies in the heart and soul of people and situations, and understanding the true character and the meaning of spiritual manifestations and thoughts and voices. And as we seek to develop this, we reduce the chances that we will be deceived by things in this world like AI, deceptive teachers, and it helps us open up and seek our spiritual gifts and to really discern those things, not only just for ourselves, but for others. And I hope that each and every one of you will take the time to practice this and to work with this so that you can develop this discernment for yourself and use it in a world that is a bit upside down and a bit wonky to help you understand what is truth, what is fiction, what is light, and what is dark, and where you need to go so that you are not deceived in a world of chaos. So I just want to thank everybody who is here today for coming to class and hanging out with me. I have the recording that will be uploaded over to YouTube, likely this weekend, because I am going to take a trip to Sedona with my spiritual besties tomorrow. So I'm super excited about that. So I won't be able to get it up just quite yet, but kind of look out for an email. I will let you guys know when I get it up on my website and YouTube so that you guys can watch that replay. And until that replay is up, definitely go check out the classes on the website. They're free. You don't need to put your email in or anything. And there are 2 intuition classes there that I highly recommend utilizing those as you're developing your discernment and understanding so that you too can have a strong ability of discernment and utilize that during these uncertain times so that you can understand what you need to be doing in your life, where you need to be going, and how you can become a more powerful spiritual human. So thank you everyone for being here once again. Have a beautiful day. And I love all of you. And thank you for those of you that are watching the replay. And there is another free class coming up. Cannot remember what it is. I believe it's root chakra. Go sign up for that as well if you're not coming to that. There will be a recording as well. So, all right. Bye, everybody.